all of that here with this very enthusiastic crowd. Let's get the news with Polly Middlehead.
Nigel, thank you. Back to Luton soon, but first let's bring you our top story on GB News tonight. And we begin with the news that more than 19,000 people are now known to have died after Monday's earthquake in southern Turkey and northern Syria. Around 70 members of the UK International Search and Rescue Team have joined the effort to try to find survivors in the rubble. British charities are appealing today for funds to help those affected by the disaster, with the UK government saying it'll match up to £5 million in public donations. Also in the news today, members of Parliament are to get a 2.9% pay increase from the 1st of April. That would bring their overall salaries from around £84,000 to £86,000. The Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority says the pay increase for MPs was the same as the average increase in pay for public sector employees last year. Lancashire Police say their search for missing mother of two Nicola Bulley has moved now towards the sea. The force says it's searching further downstream where the River Wyre becomes tidal. Officers have also issued a 48-hour dispersal order for St Michael's on Wyre after an abandoned house reportedly was searched by members of the public trying to solve the case for themselves, then posting footage on social media. The 45-year-old was last seen 13 days ago walking her dog. A former Labour MP has been jailed for 4 years after being found guilty of fraud committed whilst he was in office. Jared O'Mara has been convicted of 6 counts of fraud after trying to claim around £52,000 worth of taxpayers' money to fund his cocaine habit. The 41-year-old, who was an MP between 2017 and 2019, was cleared of 2 other charges by a jury at Leeds Crown Court. The judge called the crime deliberate and dishonest, saying he abused his position as an MP. And lastly, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has addressed an EU summit in Brussels today. He's been lobbying leaders to provide more weapons to Ukraine in the fight against Russia, which he's referred to as the biggest anti-European force of the modern world. Number 10 says it won't send fighter jets to Ukraine if that would put the UK at risk. Meanwhile, the Foreign and Defence Secretaries are in Rome meeting their Italian counterparts to try to galvanise support for Ukraine. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News, the People's Channel, where now we go live to Luton for Farage at Large.
Good evening. We are here live in Luton with an audience, and this is a town that often makes the news, not always for the right reasons. It's spawned 1 or 2 quite controversial characters. Tommy Robinson comes from Luton. Andrew Tate grew up in Luton, interestingly, a recent Muslim convert. And of course, Anjam Chowdhury, well, this has been one of his bases. This week, we had a report out from Prevent. Don't forget, they're the organisation set up to make us safer from terrorism. The report was utterly damning. It said there was way too much emphasis on potential far-right attacks as opposed to potential Islamist attacks. I would put this down to the politically correct nature of the kind of people involved with these organisations based in London. But the numbers are very worrying because of the last 13 terrorist attacks in this country, 7, including the murder of that MP David Amess, 7 were committed by young men who had previously been referred to Prevent. So I'm not so sure that it's working all that well. But we're living in a community here that is a third white British, a third Muslim, and a third other. It's been through huge demographic change. And frankly, social cohesion in a town like Luton is the single most important thing. This place has to work together and not be divided. Well, joining me is Dr. Sheikh Ramzi, Imam and Director of the Oxford Islamic Information Centre. And if I can say, Dr. Ramzi, before we get into the meat of this debate, perhaps some thoughts about what's happened in the last 2 or 3 days in Turkey and Syria.
Yes, Nigel. My condolence to the all victims of the Turkey and the Syria's earthquake, which was awful, of course, as all knows. Around 15,000 or more had died, and is at the moment, unfortunately, the weather is -15. They have nothing, -15, and they are crying. And of course, our condolence and our heart goes with the victim and the families of these poor people. May Almighty God bless them all and make them comfortable.
Well,
Amen.
absolutely, and every single one of us in this room agrees with that. And I have to say, the death toll is now through. The official death toll is now above 20,000.
Yes.
So it's pretty sobering stuff. It really is. Dr. Ramsey, Prevent was there to deal with terrorism. How well is it doing?
I don't believe it's doing anything at all. Unfortunately, of course, long time ago, the Prevent started, with all respect, of course, Prevent started and have gone very, very harsh. I have to say, of course, I'm a Muslim and, of course, support the Muslim, support all. I love you all, and, of course, I'm a servant of humanity. That's what I would like to say here, servant of humanity, doesn't matter who is. What happened, the Prevent went very harsh, and of course, we complained, and of course, the Prevent went very soft, and again, didn't work, and now it's changing it. It is not right. It is wrong because they spend millions of pounds of the British taxpayer for not doing a right job. I would say, of course, I shouldn't say, of course, anytime some Muslim, but many of them are beautiful. Some Muslim are put the music in and they Prevent dance to it, which is not right. It is very important. I asked the government to even change the name, but of course they are very powerful.
What has happened here is people expressing even very mainstream views about excess been investigated under Prevent, and I've no doubt there are some on the other side who, for flying a Palestinian flag, might have been referred to Prevent. But the point is, we are, and let's be frank about this, there are many people like yourself, Muslims who love this country, love the people of this country, but there are a number who don't. I feel we're even more vulnerable to Islamic extremism today than we've ever been.
You have a point, of course, Nigel. I can't say you haven't got a point. I know your opinions from the very long time ago.
Excuse me, I'm trying to be objective about
absolutely.
this.
What I'm trying to say here, perhaps the government is should look in a different way. What we have here, we have a school. We got about 20 different schools of thought in the United Kingdom, which they don't like each other. Many of them, they are extreme. Many of them, they are on the way, which are very easy, like a brothers and sisters. People going to the mosques. Many going, but very few are perhaps going toward the extremism. And the government should look at that. What I suggested to the government some time ago, I said, what we need like a Christian, a hierarchical organization. We got a 20 to 30, we got 1,700 mosques, which each going to the other countries. And they take an order or they take an opinion from other countries, which is not right. If we have a hierarchical,
So you're suggesting that if the mosques had one central structure around which they could operate,
yes,
we might not get,
absolutely,
whether it's from Saudi Arabia
absolutely,
or wherever it may be.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I tell you what, Dr. Ramsey, I think that's a positive suggestion, yes, but we need to do something.
No, what we need to, allow me to say, of course, what we need to do, we had, of course, I brought to the attention of government, but I believe the diversity was there, and we want to bring a archbishop. If you got the archbishop, which is on top, and everybody talking to the archbishop, okay, instead of going to, the government done a 1,700 letter to the mosques. He could send it to the archbishop and the archbishop get to everybody else's. Money goes in the wrong places.
Dr.
Money
Ramsey,
goes in the wrong places.
Dr. Ramsey, I think we are as critical as each other of Prevent, and I thank you for coming on and giving a constructive suggestion. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Now, Luton, this town has a tradition of car making that goes back well over 100 years. And whilst it may be true that these days Luton Airport and the associated businesses are the biggest employer, the identity of this place with car making is very, very strong. The situation today is, well, there is still a plant here. It was Vauxhall. It's a much more complicated mix of companies now. But they're still turning out 110,000 business commercial vans every single year and employing 1,500 people and 300 contractors. So it is still absolutely vitally important to Luton. Well, joining me to discuss this, chief columnist of Auto Express, Mike Rutherford. Good start. Mike, how do you see Luton's future as a van manufacturing town?
I think it's sad that we lost car production in Luton, but vans are very much. I mean, you've only got to look at how many of them there are around. I mean,
it feels like more than cars some days.
Well, absolutely, and that's the effect, of course, of home deliveries, etc.
Yeah.
But yeah, I personally, I think I know General Motors. I've spent a lot of time in Detroit with the former owner of Vauxhall, and I know Peugeot, Stellantis, as they're now called. And I would rather have Stellantis as the parent company than GM of Detroit,
okay.
Let me tell you that. So in that sense, it's a positive. The bigger picture is not great for the UK. And that's because this forced switch to pure electric cars in 2030.
This false switch, did you say?
Forced by the government.
Forced, right.
Yeah. I mean...
But it's not going to happen, is it?
They're not saying... They're sticking to their guns. I mean, we don't know, but I tell you what, there are an awful lot of people who are very scared out there and wondering what they're going to do with their petrol, because they want, electric cars do not suit their lifestyle, if you like.
It also now costs more money to drive an electric car, up the M1 or whatever it may be for a long distance than it does with unleaded, doesn't it?
Well, the problem is with the electric car, and it just occurred to me tonight that the first electric car I drove when I was a cub reporter in the early 80s, actually it wasn't a car. I don't know if anyone remembers it, if these are local people, but there was a Bedford van that was an electric van, and I drove it not far away from here. And that shows that, if you like, this part of the world was ahead of the game.
Yeah.
The problem is not the vehicles, actually. The technology's good, they're great to drive. The range is extending further and further. The problem is the infrastructure, which is lousy in this country, and it really is bad. And there's nothing more soul-destroying, let me tell you, than turning up late at night, 2 or 3 broken or collapsed public charging units. They charge you a fortune,
yeah, it's not
and you can't recharge.
No, well,
no, I mean, we need action on that front.
No, we certainly do. One last subject, Mike, I must discuss with you. ULEZ, the ULEZ zone. Mayor Khan is extending the ULEZ zone. There'll be a lot of people in Luton because London is not that far away. People driving commercial vans, maybe doing shift work. They could be paying, if they're going in before midnight and coming back out after midnight, up to 25 quid a day. What's it all about?
Right, and work that out 300 days of the year, say, and you're into many thousands of pounds. Yeah.
Unless you've got the money to afford a smart new electric car.
What it means is...
Or newer car.
Yeah, but and somebody like a nurse who has to commute in, who starts a shift at, 10 o'clock and pays once at 10 o'clock and then pays again at 6 o'clock the following morning, gets hit twice. I mean, it's a scam by Sadiq Khan. And I think, the real test, and I've put it to them, that if he really believes that cars are killing people in Greater London, doesn't he ban them all? I'll tell you why he doesn't ban them all, because he wants the £12.50 plus the congestion charge from us lot. That's why he doesn't ban them. So he should have the courage of his convictions. But on a more practical note, Nigel, how are we going to stop this happening? Forget about big hikes in fuel prices. I mean, they pale into insignificance when it comes to the sort of money that people are going to be forking out here. So how are we going to stop it? And again, in a moment of inspiration, and it occurred to me as I was driving up here, up the M1, it needs somebody to stand against him on a ticket that says, vote me in as Mayor of London, and I'll scrap the extended ULEZ scheme. And it seems to me there's somebody out there, this is not an endorsement for him, I'm not particularly a fan of him, but there's somebody out there who's semi-redundant at the moment who could do that job and fight for the mayoralty on that ticket. And that person is somebody you know called Boris Johnson.
If he wasn't so committed to the green agenda, maybe, but he is, because he's married to Kerry, and he's changed since he married Kerry. Mike Rutherford, you're absolutely right. This extended ULEZ zone is going to affect so many people, those that can least afford it. It needs to be fought, absolutely fought hard. Thank you for joining us here on GB News. In a moment, I'll be joined by Christopher Hope of the Daily Telegraph. We'll ask, is it possible that Luton could ever go back to the Conservatives? All of that when I'm back with you in a couple of minutes.
This Saturday at 8 p.m, tune in to a GB News Investigates documentary as we tell the full story of the grooming gang scandal.
My childhood had been stolen.
We will expose the cover-ups that have kept this national scandal under wraps for decades.
Not one person has been held accountable.
Our investigation uncovers the true scale of this outrage.
I want to see senior officials held legally to account.
On GB News, Grooming Gangs, Britain's Shame.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back to Luton. Now, A little bit of breaking news in the last few minutes. Nadine Dorries, the former Culture Secretary, has announced she will be standing down at the next election. And she is, of course, a Bedfordshire MP, so that's quite relevant, I thought, to this audience here. This evening, she'll spend time doing paintings of Boris, I expect, or something like that. I'm joined by Christopher Hope, Associate Editor of the Daily Telegraph. Welcome to the programme. 40 years ago, these were Conservative seats with quite big majorities. They're now very, very safe Labour seats. Given the poll that you guys put out last night, I mean, literally, the Tories don't have a cat's chance in hell here, do they?
Nothing at all. I mean, 506 seats for the Labour Party. There's only 650 seats going for you in the House of Commons. Extraordinary numbers. Tories third behind the SNP. Extraordinary. The SNP get 50 seats, Tories get 45 seats. Extraordinary numbers there. I mean, the party, if there's a vote held tomorrow, it's an MRP polling, so they can do seat by seat. 15 cabinet ministers disappear. Rishi Sunak, no longer an MP. Others, Boris Johnson, your old pal, Liz Truss, they all disappear, all gone. If there's a vote tomorrow, and of course there won't be 18 months, a long time in politics. 18 months ago, we were forecasting a three-term Boris Johnson government, weren't we? So that's ended. So
this goes to show we shouldn't listen to associate editors of the Telegraph when it comes to political predictions.
Thank you. And the Reform Party gets 6% of the vote, but no MPs. So don't bother standing.
Hey, you know, we've actually been through the most incredible political volatility for the last 10 years. It could turn around a bit, but I wouldn't have thought that much. Yesterday, President Zelensky, and there he was, you know, the joint Houses of Parliament, unanimity of support, newspapers today, including your own, the Mail, others, you know, we must arm Zelensky to the teeth, we must send fighter jets, we must do all these things. Does anybody in Fleet Street worry about the risk of escalation?
That is a worry, no question. I mean, he went there, he said, I need planes. Well, we're giving him tanks. The next step is obviously air support. But you're doing it through a proxy through Ukraine. We can't go into battle with Russia. That's called World War III. That can't happen. It's very risky, and that's why there's so much concern. The government says now we're looking at it. The visit was such a surprise yesterday. Ben Wallace was in Rome, wasn't even there in number 10 Downing Street to have a conversation about what else to give him. But it's definitely a concern.
No, it is. Now, the big story of the day, politically, is, of course, Lee Anderson, the former, who's been on this programme before, the former miner, the former Labour Party man, who became a Conservative Member of Parliament for Ashfield, a little bit further up the M1 than we are right now. And an interview has emerged where he said that he would support the return of the death penalty, and that rather epic Lee Anderson quote, that nobody that's been executed has ever re-offended. Which is...
That's almost good as one of your jokes.
Oh, no, it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty good, but it's not causing much humour in Parliament. It's not causing much humour in the media. I tell you what amazes me is I've heard Michael Fabricant today saying there should be a debate in Parliament. Rishi Sunak going, oh gosh, have we really made him deputy chairman in the last couple of days? No one's mentioned the fact that because we're signed up to the ECHR, because we're signed up to the European Convention on Human Rights, part of that deal is we ban the death penalty. So we can't even have a conversation on it, and yet we never get honest debate about this. That drives me absolutely bonkers.
But he's offering it, isn't he, Lee Anderson? Yeah, that is an honest, unvarnished opinion.
No, that's his opinion, absolutely. Final thought from you, Chris. Can Lee Anderson survive as deputy chairman of the Conservative Party?
Well, I hope so. I think he speaks for an unacknowledged group of people. More than half the country think there should be the death penalty back for multiple murders, 49% for child killers, 30% for all murders. So there's a group out there who think that is an opinion that should be heard, and I think it's a matter of conscience. He shouldn't be fired.
I'm going to ask the audience this question, whether you would support the return of a death penalty in certain circumstances, whether you'd be opposed to it, or whether, I'll give you a third option, you don't know or you'd rather not say on national television. Hands up those who would support, under some circumstances, the return of the death penalty.
Yeah.
And how many would be opposed? How many would rather not say?
That's gracious. 8 and 10.
Lee Anderson, maybe you're the only Conservative that could win a seat in Luton at the next general election. Chris, thank you very much indeed. And I'll be back with you in a couple of minutes, where it'll be the audience's turn and Barrage the Farage. Back with you in 2.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank. My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back to Luton. It is now time for Barrage the Farage. You get to throw the questions at me. All I know is your first name. Elsa, what have you got for me?
Hello, Nigel.
Good evening.
Pleased to see you tonight. So I've got a question for you. Do you think the country will be ready for central bank digital currency by 2030? And how can we protect our data against artificial intelligence, AI for short? Well, all I can say, Elsa, is I hope we're not ready for central bank digital currencies by 2030. This is all the drive towards a cashless society. It was pushed and promoted during the pandemic to the most extraordinary degree. You know what? This would... And they're saying it'll come in phases. To begin with, there'll be a limit on the money, whatever. They say that there'll be, in law, they'll guarantee that cash will stay, but actually it won't. If they get what they want, and there's up to 100 governments worldwide looking at CBDCs,
If they get what they want, they have complete control over our lives, and they can actually stop us spending money on things that they don't approve of. I think it's the most appalling idea, but I'm not in the least bit surprised that Andrew Out to Lunch Bailey, who runs the Bank of England and who is completely useless, and Jeremy Hunt, our globalist Chancellor, have put it in. Your second question, very quickly, AI, ChatGPT has been talked about a lot over the last few weeks. You know, you only have to put a few ideas in to see it is so politically biased as to be extremely dangerous. Elsa, what are your thoughts on CBDCs?
Well, I think, yeah, if we go down that route, then we're going to lose all privacy, you know, when it comes to finance, and we'll lose our independence.
Right.
And I'm afraid that we will become like China. You know, the government controlling our lives.
Well, which is why we're going to fight it, Elsa. Thank you.
Okay.
Next up is Dave. A lot of passion there. Dave, what have you got for me?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for hosting this debate, so very important. Thank you. My question is about the charity sector. We know that there are charities, both large and small, that do much good work. Certain large charities receive a lot of funding in government contracts to run services, yet in some cases govern themselves very poorly, with money being spent other than on frontline services. Is it right that such charities should receive huge grants from public money, and should they be more accountable, or should such funding and support go to help others in the country, people, organisations who are struggling, yet put so much into society?
I honestly don't think that government should fund charities. I think by definition, charities are organisations that stand on their own 2 feet. If governments are going to spend money, they spend it through departments. There are times when government can donate towards specific ideas, and, you know, frankly, giving a few quid towards those people suffering right now in Turkey and Syria strikes me as being a very good thing that, you know, I'm quite happy if the hat goes round to put money into that. But generally, the charity sector has almost become, in some instances, an arm of government. The relationship between the two is entirely wrong. And what I forgot to say earlier, I didn't forget, there wasn't time, was one of the criticisms of that Prevent programme was they were giving money to organisations and so-called charities who, in their own way, were actually promoting Islamic extremism and not stopping it. So, no, I would like to see government and charities as separate as possible. Your thoughts, Dave?
Well, I would certainly agree with you in many cases there, Nigel. What can happen is, I think that any money support should be linked to governance, and that there are many across the sector, both charity, business, otherwise, in the community, who put in a great deal, yet often miss out on the resource. And the voluntary sector, others, often do so much with least resource.
I share your concern about much of this. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Nigel.
Gurmeet. Good evening, Gurmeet.
Good evening, Nigel. Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. What have you got for me?
I'm a big fan of Donald Trump. As I'm sure you are. And
can't say that on British television. It's not allowed. He's so great. He's the best.
As I'm sure you're a fan of him as well. In fact, I liken you and Donald Trump to the Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer of politics. But anyway. Do you think he's the right man to lead the Republicans in 2024, or do you think it should be Ron DeSantis, given that he's got a bit less baggage?
Well, no one's got more baggage than Trump. I mean, that's absolutely true. But no one's got more courage than Trump. And hey, he told NATO, stop feeding off America, start putting money into defence. And hey, now we're supposed to be giving tanks and planes and everything to Ukraine. He was right about that. He was right in telling Merkel, you know, stop becoming so dependent on Russia. He got so many of the big calls right. Look, I get DeSantis. He's 44. He represents a generational shift, which, given that American politics has become a gerontocracy, with old Sleepy Wobbly Joe and all the rest of it, who didn't do badly the other night, actually, surprisingly. Trump will win the nomination. I think the base, and I'll be out at the CPAC conference at the end of this month, I think Trump will win, but I think at least the Republicans have got two great choices. What do you think?
My heart says Trump, my head says DeSantis, but I think that the ideal scenario would be to have Trump lead it and then have DeSantis on the ticket, and then come the next election, DeSantis can run for it.
Gurmeet, it's a great question. It's going to be a huge debate in America over the course of the next year. Thank you very much indeed. Jim, good evening.
Hello, Lord Farage.
Not much chance of that.
There's still time. So my question is to you. The Labour-run Luton Council are building on over parks such as Wandon Park, despite the pandemic showing how we need to open green spaces, borrowing millions on expanding the airport while saying they're concerned about the planet with net zero. How do we stop this undemocratic hypocrisy?
That's easy, by voting for other people. You know, they are by definition a council, and if you vote for different people, you can get different results. And actually, what you do see in some areas are the growth of independents. You know, why should all of our councillors be tied to the Conservative Party or Labour Party or the Lib Dems? The idea that men and women can stand up and form independent groups, I find that quite attractive. On the parks, I want to say this. I've got, Kerry Dixon coming on for Talking Pints. There are too many of our kids, in my view, spend their whole blooming time sitting indoors in their bedrooms watching goodness knows what on mobile phones. And we want to encourage kids to be outdoor, to be playing sports, to be doing things. And I think, I get expanding the airport, it's jobs, it's money for the town, despite the hypocrisy of net zero. But I do think the number of schools now who haven't even got football pitches, I think the whole thing is dreadful. And I think, Luton, you should do your best to make sure you get people that keep green spaces in Luton.
Yeah, the other guy.
And finally, Dave.
Nigel Ditcher.
Good evening.
This is quite topical, as you just released information that Nadine Dorries is standing down at the next election.
Yep.
What are your views regarding MPs that decide to defer peerages until the next election in order to avoid by-elections?
Well, it's called being part of the club. It's called being part of the club. It's deeply cynical. It is deeply, deeply cynical and pretty insulting, actually, to many members of the public and many of the voters. And Dave, look, the real answer is this. The detachment between the political class and ordinary people, we hoped the Brexit vote was going to narrow that gap. And in many ways, I think they've become even more detached from reality than they even were before. What say you?
I'm inclined to agree with you. I've got a vested interest in the Mid-Bedfordshire constituency, so anything you can do to force her to the House of Lords would work well for me. If you don't.
OK, very good. Thank you very much indeed. OK, we'll draw a line there. In a moment, it's Talking Pints with Luton-born Chelsea superstar Kerry Dixon. Back with you in 2.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere. Amazing! You see, amazing! You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel. Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful. Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Okay, welcome back. It's time for Talking Pints. Kerry Dixon, Luton born and bred. And I guess in those days, when we thought Luton, we thought Eric Morecambe, didn't we?
Very much so. Luton born and bred, it was a tribal mentality. You support your hometown club.
Which Eric Morecambe absolutely did.
As I did. Eric Morecambe did. They have a suite named after him, which, you know, very popular. Sadly, they're still in there. They're still at Kenilworth Road after many years of trying to get out of there, which is a bit of a problem for them. But as I say, they're still making inroads into getting the new stadium, and everyone who has a thought, if you like, for Luton Town, hope that they do manage to make the transition.
Yeah, and they're doing, you know, this year in the Championship, they're doing really well. They're lying fourth at the moment. Pretty impressive.
They've been doing very well for the last few years, actually. Playoffs this year. I mean, many people say that Luton are punching because of what they do and the stadium and all the rest of it. But they've always been quite formidable. They've produced quite a few good sides over the years. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing to say that they won't make the playoffs again.
That'd be interesting. And odd, really, Kerry, you know, you grew up Luton fan. You went on to have this very distinguished football career. But at the time, the Hatters, as they're known, when you were young, they didn't really want you, did they?
No, I got kicked out of there, kicked out of Tottenham as well. Told by David Pleat, Peter Shreves, various managers weren't going to make it. That was 16 and 18. But there was one or two that believed I would make it.
When you're that young and you've set your heart on doing something, and you've obviously got a talent, and you're told you're not going to make it, how do you cope with that and deal with that as a young man?
You cope with it and you do it. I went into a factory and became a tool maker.
Yep.
Done my apprenticeship for 4 or 5 years, Cardale Engineering, which is a local firm, and played football part-time. I was part-time at Spurs.
Yep.
And I really not hit the big time, but I played for Dunstable after Spurs saying I'm not going to make it.
Yep.
Played for Dunstable, which is a local side. Did well there, and Reading spotted me.
Yep.
The rest is history, as they say. 3 years at Reading and then 9 at Chelsea. And
yeah, and you know, when you went to Chelsea, you know, Ken Bates was running it. He's been on this programme, and Chelsea wasn't quite the glamour club, was it? At that moment in time, it was having a tough time.
Well, it was having a tough time, but I think Chelsea, from the 1970 Cup final, for members of the audience who could actually remember it, became a glamour club then with Peter Osgood, Alan Hudson. Kings Road, the swagger, the association with all of that, they became a big club. And certainly the fan base was very big. They could always pull 40,000 if they're going well. Sadly, at the time, they weren't going so well. But things changed in the summer of '83 when 6 of us joined, and
and you made
bit of an upward curve.
You did make a bit of a difference, Kerry, didn't you? I mean, no, come on. I mean, this is why, you know, this is how your name in football became what it was. I mean, your first 2 seasons, in 101 games, you scored 70 goals for Chelsea. You must have felt on top of the world.
I can only say yes. I mean, it weren't bad going at the time.
I mean, that was absolutely incredible. And, you know, you spent, say, 9 years there. You come out of it at the end. And at the time, you were the second highest ever goal scorer for the club.
Third. I couldn't... at the time, yes, you're right.
At the time... I think a chap called Lampard has just snuck in front of
quite deservedly so as well.
What makes somebody a good goal scorer?
Well, if I say it now, it'll upset a lot of Chelsea fans, but anyone who watches the club would know that they're crying out for one. I mean, the art of tapping a ball in from 5 yards and being in the right place, it is an art. I mean, people say it wasn't a good goal. Goodness me, the amount of...
It's on the score sheet. It's on the score sheet. And is it about instinct? I mean, they say about Greaves, you know, Greaves was an incredible goal scorer. I know Kane's just overtaken his Tottenham record. But they also with Greaves, he just seemed to be in the right place at the right time.
Phenomenal. Probably the greatest goal scorer of all time for various clubs. Chelsea, one of them, I think it was 130 odd goals in about 180 games in 4 years, averaging about 40 goals a season. His record for England was great.
Incredible.
And, you know, for Tottenham, of course, Harry Kane's just overtaken his particular record. So,
but you had this gift too.
There's lots of people who've had a gift. They are out-and-out goal scorers. They might not necessarily be good footballers, but they could score goals. And there is a bit of a difference.
What were you, both?
More the goal scorer.
Love the modesty. Love the modesty. And then, well, you're still, I mean, you know, it's absolutely clear, isn't it, that, you know, the Bridge, Stamford Bridge, you're still an enormously popular figure there, aren't you?
Well, I still work there. I do matchday hospitality there. Yep. I have been invited by Luton to do their matchday hospitality as well. But, you know, I'm nearly 30 years in at Chelsea now, and I grew up supporting Luton, but sadly with the affinity to one club like that, 9 years playing and you know 20 odd years on the other side of things, they become my first club, and Luton sadly become a second club. But it's the way it is.
But you did actually, towards the end of your football career, you did finally appear for the Hatters. You played 75 games for them.
It was one of the great days for me to actually go out and play for Luton.
It must have been.
I think David Pleat, ironically, was the man who let me go at 16, was the same man that signed me at the age of 32. He said, I think you could do a job. I wish he'd have said it many, many years before, but he was a great manager for Luton. And, yeah, I mean, I love going out there and playing for Luton, hometown club. Ironically, we played Chelsea in a semi-final.
FA Cup semi-final.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, at times in our lives, we're faced with conflicts and split loyalties. But for you, I just thinking about, I was thinking about this earlier, for you, you know, Luton born and bred, Luton town supporter, rejected by Luton, accepted by Luton, playing for Luton, and then it's the FA Cup final against Chelsea.
Semi-final.
Semi-final. Yeah. What was going through your head?
Oh, it was a bit like one you couldn't lose, but you were going to lose either way. The days of a bit controversial, if you like, you know, people say, you know, kissing badge, you love this club, love your club, and all the rest of it, what you feel in a bond. I have a bond with Chelsea, but Luton, you've already said, born and bred, so I went out there, and believe me, the days of you wouldn't celebrate against your club, it might gall with one or two, but I would desperately try to score, and I would have celebrated. It wouldn't have been in people's faces and taking the mickey as such, but
You wanted to
scoring a goal is what it was all about.
Yeah.
And to jump up, you can't help yourself. So I can't sit here and say I wouldn't have celebrated.
No.
The natural enthusiasm for scoring a goal, I would have scored.
Yeah.
Listen, it never come up.
It didn't happen.
We got beat 2-0, Chelsea won it. And, it was the end of it was a wonderful cup run for Luton.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But on the day, Chelsea fans made it a special day for me, probably the most humbling football day of my life, by singing my name after they're going to the cup final. At the age of 34, I was never going to a cup final, or the chances were slim.
Yeah, but they still loved you. Well, they clearly did. They clearly did. He's welling up now, but they clearly did.
Chelsea is where it is for me.
Yeah, I get it.
Without overstating the point.
No, I get it. And the England career, Kerry, you 8 caps, 4 goals, good ratio and all that. But you were a bit unlucky. There were a lot of other good strikers around at the time, weren't there?
Yes, there were. I mean, I'm not going to name them, but there was plenty. Mick Harford and Paul Walsh and Brian Steele at Luton all got England caps.
Yeah.
For various stages.
A chap called Lineker was quite useful.
Lineker.
But he was good at football, not much good at political opinions, but good at football.
That's more your department, Nigel, not mine.
Yeah, but still great to play for your country.
It was wonderful. When I stood there in the Aztec Stadium in '85, full debut, it was going to be. I used to collect the Panini stickers for the younger members of the audience. Won't remember what's he talking about, but stickers of players that you've put in books, and you had the whole lot, and it would have been Kerry Dixon, Chelsea, and England here on in, and I was so proud. Never quite understand. Players want to retire from international duty for whatever reason. They say to prolong their careers. It was an honour. From a kid growing up playing football in the street to represent your country, it was an honour. And 8 caps, I'm very proud of them.
Absolutely, and so you should be. So you should be. Kerry, recent years you've had some tough times.
Yeah.
You've had some very tough times. You've had some difficulties with drugs. You've had some difficulties with the police, a little bit of prison, etc. You've had some very tough times. You say that the root cause of your problem is an addiction that maybe we don't talk about enough. We talk about people with drink problems, drug problems, but your big problem is gambling, yeah?
Yeah, but I wouldn't have said gambling. Gambling is the area where you end up, because I believe all roads lead to nothing. If you're a gambler, there aren't many. There's the odd one who'll come out of the woodwork and say he's made it work for him. But by and large, people who gamble to the levels that I was gambling, you can't win. And hence, most of the money that I earned during my football career and other businesses as such went down the drain. So, yeah. And if anyone ever says, what's tougher, it's certainly tougher at the bottom. Given the choice, tough at the top, it's certainly tougher at the bottom. And you could argue I've been to both.
Yeah, I guess you could. How easy is it to kick the gambling habit?
I don't think it's easy to kick any habit. I think any addiction, any habit, you have to work at it. You've got to have a desire to do it. You've got to want to do it. And you've got to have people around you, the support, to be able to do it. Also, I think people who can't kick the habit as such have got to be able to control it. That's possibly the key for me, controlling. Circumstances dictate at the moment, because obviously £1,000 here, £1,000 there, 500 here and so on, no longer can happen. But nevertheless, I'm not going to say never, because if I wanted a football accumulator for £1 on a Saturday afternoon, I'd quite enjoy putting 5 or 6 teams together in the hope that I might get 70 quid or something like that. Great. So it's still there. So whether you kick it or not, whether you can. Other addictions are for other people, and you've all got to work out your own thing.
Yeah.
I go around sometimes, and I've done talks to people about addictions and help and stuff like that. But every case is different, and there isn't a blanket way that you could say to anyone, this is what you've got to do.
Kerry, can I say to you, from me, on behalf of the audience, well done for all the things you've done and your bravery and honesty in talking about those tough parts of your life. And thank you for joining me on Talking Pub.
No problem, thank you.
OK, so Our finale tonight. Yes, it's our old friends, Bell and Sperling, and they've got a little ditty, and it's called Nigel Says. Off you go, boys.
Teachers are bunking off, my bills are through the roof. We've all been ripped off and the country's on strike. I've swapped me car for a bike. Cons ULEZ is coming to town. It's Brexit anniversary, but we still got regulations and they're coming across the sea. The state we can't trust because they've been spying on us. Wouldn't surprise me if they brought back Liz Truss.
You what?
Nigel says just how it is. It's been a botched job. Nigel says just as it is. So Boris, shut your goal, 'cause Nigel's always on the ball. Nigel says
time to get back control of our borders.
Nigel says
I kid you not.
Nigel says
the answer's a big fat no.
He's Nigel Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app, and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News,